Book review: Searoad Chronicles of Klatsand by Ursula K. Guin in Searoad Chronicles of Klatsand. Ursula K. Guin departs from the speculative world she is best known for, Urtzi Anar's Gethin, and offers instead haunting, tender exploration of the human heart through the lens of realism. First published in 1991, this novel and stories is among Le Guin's most grounded, yet paradoxically also one of her most daring. Comprised of 13 interconnected tales set in the fictional Oregon coastal town of Klatsand, Searoad is not about epic quests or futuristic societies, but about memory, art, and the lived experiences of women and artists shaped by time and place. Plot summary: Ursula K. Le Guin Searoad Chronicles of Klatsand is quiet literary triumph, meditative, poetic, and intimate. Published in 1991, this work of literary fiction departs from the speculative landscapes of Le Guin's better-known science fiction and fantasy. Instead, it offers realist, grounded portrait of American coastal life, told through 13 interconnected stories that revolve around the lives of women, and to lesser extent the men. Fictional town of Klatsand, Oregon. Le Guin crafts book that is both local and universal. Klatsand, small vacation town on the Pacific coast, is the kind of place tourists pass through and longtime residents rarely leave. But beneath its salt-worn, windswept surface lies world teeming with memory, quiet sorrow, and untold resilience through the lives of its inhabitants, many of them women. Searoad explores themes of creativity, aging, longing, invisibility, and the quiet persistence of being. Setting the scene: Klatsand is placed in metaphor. Klatsand itself functions as the central character of the book. Fictional but palpably real town marked by dunes, fog, seasonal tourists, empty motels, and crashing surf. Le Guin constructs it with evocative precision. The town is humble. It has no great history or prestige, but it carries the weight of lived experience. From its cafes and schools to its cheap summer rentals and oceanside homes, becomes mirror reflecting the passage of time, social change, and generational shifts. Each story is anchored in a particular moment in Klatsand's 20th century history, yet the timelines loosely overlap, and the characters subtly recur or echo one another across decades. The cumulative effect is layered, nonlinear vision of community and continuity rooted in place. For the sake of stories and voices, the novel is structured as a series of vignettes, each focused on different characters, most of them women, whose lives are shaped by both personal circumstance and the forces of time, gender expectations, and geography. Though each story can stand alone, together they weave rich tapestry of emotional insight. 1. Foam Women. The book opens with Anna, recent widow seeking solitude at beachfront motel. In her grief, Anna reflects on her husband's infidelity and her own complicity in living life shaped by conventional domestic roles. As she wanders the shore, she begins to rediscover herself a separate, desiring being. The story sets the tone for the collection, introspective, emotionally precise, and steeped in the imagery of the sea. 2. The Middle Children. This tale traces 3 generations of women in the Torvin family, juxtaposing the ambitions, frustrations of each. The matriarch, who once dreamed of being pianist, watches her daughter become practical housewife, and her granddaughter yearn to escape. The story examines how creativity and selfhood are passed down or stifled within families. 3. Old Women. In collective narrative voice, group of elderly women reflects on aging, sexuality, loss, and memory. They have grown used to being invisible in public, but within themselves they remain vital and complex. Le Guin here gives voice to demographic often ignored in literature, offering dignity and candor to their thoughts. Or Ferns. Teenage girl Miranda falls into an awkward romance with boy during family vacation. When she meets Eberly, solitary older woman who paints birds, she glimpses an alternative path. Woman's life built not around men or children, but around art and independence. Their brief connection subtly alters Miranda's view of her future. 5. Lindy. This story centers on a motel cleaner who was once a jazz singer. Through her perspective, we learn how economic necessity, social pressures, and family responsibilities thwarted her dreams. Yet there's no bitterness, only kind of musical melancholy that infuses the narrative. 6. Duros. Man recounts his life in Klatsand, reflecting on his failed relationships and unfulfilled longings. While his story is framed by masculine detachment, the emotional weight remains rooted in the women he recalls, those who shaped him, left him, or haunted him. 7. The Lost Children. Among the most haunting stories, this narrative follows a woman who lost her 2 children in car accident. She continues to write letters to them, describing daily life, moments of remembrance, and guilt. Her act of writing becomes both coping mechanism and form of creative survival. 8. The Legions. Set during wartime, this tale explores patriotism, loss, and identity through a woman whose husband has gone off to fight. She struggles with both pride and resentment, her sense of self eroded by the weight of duty. 9. Salt. Sensual lyrical piece about brief love affair between two older people. The sea and salt air become metaphors for weather, desire, endurance, and the erosions of time. 10. Friends. Two women childhood friendship during return visit to Klatsand. What begins with nostalgia soon becomes complicated as they confront what they never said and who they've become. Their relationship illustrates how female friendships can be deep, fraught, and sometimes redemptive. 11. Sea change. In rare point of view shift, this story follows a young man returning to Klatsand after years away. He's drawn to the stillness of the place and reflects on his estranged mother. Artistic legacy he now sees in new light. 12. Grace. Woman known for her generosity to others begins to lose her memory. As she becomes stranger to herself and those around her, her story becomes meditation on legacy, care, and the ways women are remembered or forgotten. 13. Klatsand. The final story brings the town itself into focus, reflecting on the lives that have passed through it like waves on the shore. The narrative voice zooms out slightly, offering bird's-eye view of Klatsand's transformation over the years, from remote fishing village to quaint tourist destination. But beneath the surface, the town remains much the same, place where time laps gently over memory, recurring themes and motifs. 1. The nature of women's work. Guin gives special attention to the labor women perform, often unpaid or unrecognized, child rearing, homemaking, emotional support, community building. But she also highlights creative work, writing, and imagination that are often squeezed into the margins of women's lives. 2. Mothers and daughters. Generational tension and inheritance are core to the collection. Daughters struggle with their mother's choices while unconsciously repeating them. Mothers try to give their daughters freer life, often at the cost of their own dreams. 3. The lives of artists. Several characters are aspiring or hidden artists, painters, singers, writers, whose creative potential is shaped, thwarted, or nourished by their environment. Again reflects on what it to live creative life, especially for women without institutional support. 4. Memory and time. The stories often hinge on reflection. Characters of all ages look backward, on youth, on loss, on paths not taken. The sea with its constant motion and endless return serves as metaphor for memories, ebb and flow. 5. Silence and speech. Many characters in Searoad are silent, by choice, by trauma, or by social constraint, but the act of telling their stories becomes an assertion of presence. Guin's very act of writing them is political. It gives space and shape to those whose voices might otherwise be lost. Literary significance and style. Searoad is Guin's homage to Virginia Woolf, specifically to Room of One's Own. Like Woolf, Guin is concerned with what space, physical, psychological, creative, is afforded to women. These stories quietly argue that even the most seemingly ordinary life is shaped by profound internal struggles and triumphs. Stylistically, the prose is lyrical but controlled. Guin writes with economy and grace, often let implication carry more weight than exposition. There are no dramatic plot twists or grand climaxes. Instead, she crafts crescendos of quiet realization and emotional honesty. The result is deeply human, immersive reading experience. Conclusion: the quiet brilliance of Searoad. In Searoad Chronicles of Klatsand, Ursula K. Guin turns her extraordinary gifts to the most ordinary of subjects. Small town life, women's lives, passage time, and reveals their immense richness. The stories, while intimate and unassuming, resonate with deep emotional truths. They invite readers to consider how play shapes us, how the lives of women have been confined and yet remain powerful, and how memory and art preserve what might otherwise be lost. Searoad is novel of tides, slow, patient, persistent. It does not shout, it whispers, but in that whisper is the sound of generations of unseen labor of inner lives, shimmer with depth. For readers willing to listen, Guin offers not just stories, but map of the human heart, drawn in salt and wind and time. Quiet, layered masterpiece. Chronicles of Klatsand is an apt subtitle for what Guin offers, is less continuous narrative than a mistake. A layered chronicle of voices, perspectives, and moments that together evoke the slow, undramatic passage of life in small town. Klatsand itself is central character, salt-trodden, wind-weathered place that serves as crucible for the lives of its transient visitors and permanent residents alike. It is both setting and symbol. Representing stability and erosion, history and change, the town sits on the Oregon coast, region Guin knew intimately. She renders it with subtle precision. Gray skies, dune grasses, motels clinging to the shoreline and faint, ever-present tang of salt and sea. But it's not just atmosphere she captures. It's the soul of the place. In these stories, Klatsand becomes mirror in which characters confront their identities, their past, and the social roles they have accepted or resisted. Feminist undertones in Woolf's shadow. Le Guin acknowledged that Searoad was partly response to Virginia Woolf's Room of One's Own, and this literary dialogue is apparent throughout the book. Woolf's call for intellectual and financial independence for women, and for the necessity of literal and metaphorical room in which to write, is echoed here in Le Guin's portraits of women striving for creative space in constricting environments. Many of the stories focus mothers, daughters, widows, and women who have in some way seen their ambitions thwarted or reshaped by societal expectations. There are no the extraordinary women in Klatsand in the traditional literary sense. Instead, there are women whose lives go largely unrecorded. Motel cleaners, grandmothers, lonely teenagers, painters with day jobs, widows with unspoken regrets. But Le Guin elevates their internal lives to extraordinary heights, offering intimate to their struggles with identity, longing, and belonging. The opening story, Foam Women, introduces this central concern. Anna, widow on brief vacation in Klatsand, contemplates her late husband's affairs and the shape of her life, how it was molded not by passion but by convention. In few short pages, Le Guin captures the essence of quiet epiphany, the realization that woman's life can be both defined and defied by the structures surrounding her. Themes of creativity and constraint, art and creativity, particularly as they relate to women, form another thematic spine of the collection. Characters frequently yearn to create, to paint, to sing, to write, yet their artistic lives are often relegated to the margins, their talent buried beneath domestic responsibilities or economic necessity. In Lindy, for instance, motel worker who once had promising singing voice, reflects on how her life veered off the stage and into the realm of the practical. Still, that creative impulse endures, like forgotten melody always threatening to return. This theme finds its most poignant expression in intergenerational relationships, particularly between mothers and daughters. In The Middle Children, The Weight of Inheritance, cultural, emotional, and artistic, is explored through family of women who alternate between conformity and quiet rebellion. The daughter of homemaker becomes painter. The granddaughter of pianist finds herself in the pages of book. Each generation builds or breaks upon the choices of the one before. An ode to the overlooked. Le Guin's most radical act in Searoad is her unwavering attention to the overlooked. Older women, in particular, are rarely given literary centrality, yet here they are made visible and vital. In Old Women, a group of aged Klatsand residents speak in choral voice, reflecting on their diminished social presence yet rich interior lives. Their thoughts are laced with desire, regret, humor, and wisdom. They are not reduced to cliches or caretakers, but instead offer the dignity of complexity. Men do appear in the book. Fathers, sons, lovers, husbands, but often as peripheral or symbolic figures. Their emotional lives are sometimes opaque, shaped silence or absence. In stories like Duros, Le Guin turns her gaze toward male loneliness and stunted emotional development, suggesting that patriarchy wounds men as much as it confines women. See Soap Sense of Time. Time in Searoad is not linear but tidal. The stories range from the early 20th century to the 1990s, but Le Guin resists chronology in favor of more fluid unfolding. Characters age, memories resurface, buildings crumble and are rebuilt. In this way, the book mimics the coastal setting. Lives like shorelines are shaped by erosion and accretion. In the closing story, Klatsand, Le Guin widens the narrative lens to reflect on the town itself, offering meta-commentary on the passage of time and the stories it leaves behind. There's no grand finale, only the quiet continuation of life and memory as steady and relentless as the sea. Language and craft. Le Guin's prose here is spare, lyrical, and deeply sensory. She doesn't use language to dazzle, but to distill. Her sentences are clear and rhythmic, attuned to the quiet music of thought and observation. She allows space for silence, for suggestion, for nuance. There's no melodrama in these stories, only the rich drama of human feeling, lost desire, disappointment, tenderness, ambiguity. Her restraint is perhaps what makes the books emotionally powerful. She trusts her readers to listen carefully, to find meaning in the subtext, and to accept that not all stories have tidy ending. Searoad asks us to bear witness, not to acts of heroism or tragedy, but to the ordinary acts of survival and self-definition that characterize real lives. Final thoughts. Searoad Chronicles of Klatsand is luminous exploration of life at the margins, geographically, socially, and emotionally. It's a book about women whose lives may never make headlines, but who nonetheless shape the emotional architecture of their families and communities. It's about the art that is made in secret, the words never spoken aloud, the rooms claimed in silence. In Klatsand, Le Guin crafts not just town but world world wars. Personal is political, where the smallest details are worthy of reverence, and where every life, no matter how unremarkable on the surface, contains multitudes. This is novel that requires patience and attention, but rewards both with emotional depth, literary elegance, and quiet, enduring truth. His literary achievement. Searoad might not carry the high-profile status of the left hand of darkness or the dispossessed, but it is no less essential. It is Guin, most intimate and wise, her most observant and tender. It is her love letter to women, to artists, to the slow unfolding of time, and to the sea that shapes us all.